Hey Pablo, can you see me and hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Hi,
I don't
Max.
know, I don't know what happened, but you stayed in the backstage.
Backstage. You left
Yeah,
you left
I
me behind,
I
Max.
know. I'm sorry.
All
Uh,
good.
I'm still learning here. All right, sorry folks. Well, welcome to this. My name is Max, and I do everything education community for Okta Workflows. So today we have a special guest, Pablo Valero. And then he's now in the webinar. Again, I left him in backstage. He's an active Workloads community member, and you can find him on the Mac admin Slack and the Okta admin Slack. So if you have ever need to ask him, a question after this event, you will find them in those spaces. And I'm going to share a link as we go through this event. I'll share links to those Slack's community spaces. But the topic today is calculate the value of Okta Workloads identity automation. So Pablo is going to tell you what he's been doing to show the value of all the automations that they've been building. And lastly, this event is recorded and it will be available on the Okta YouTube channel. You'll receive a message tomorrow with the link to the recording as well. And I think that's it, Pablo. So it's all yours from here.
Great. Thank you, Max. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. Uh, like Max said, I'm Pablo. I have been Okta Workflows user for a very long time. Um, I adopted in my previous company. We were very, very early to the adoption of the product. I've seen the product evolve a lot. Um, and throughout, I've been building workflows in the probably in the hundreds now. Not maybe not quite 1,000, but a lot. I have a lot of workflows, and I have tried to automate as much as we can, of course. I'm sure you do too, right? And so one of the things that tends to happen is I put on my technical hat on, and I'm trying to solve a lot of these challenges that that you can have with workflows, trying to get certain API to work a certain way, try to get the values to flow nicely, try to do all the error checking, and so I get really focused on the technical side of things, and then because I work from home especially, my leadership is like, okay, so what exactly are you working on? Why why do you disappear? And it's typically because I'm working through issues. And it I've been thinking a lot about that. How much are we automating, right? A lot of this stuff maybe you can hire somebody to do, but if you can get it automated and working nicely, then there is a value to the business. And so I've had to step away from the technical side multiple times to really make an assessment. What does this mean, right? To somebody that's looking at the workforce, the hours spent on things, on the long-term, the long-term return on investment at the end of the day. So what I want to do today is not basically going to show you my screen, go into building some workflows, and just kind of show how we can translate that into formulas that you can then pivot and use that into um, calculating, you know, different numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Screen share. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So there's a lot of workflows I'm sure that that are similar among us programmers. I created three different ones and I have them running on a schedule right now that they don't really do anything, right? Because the point of this meetup today is really not about talking about the inner workings of all these things. It's really about having a single workflow that you can just use for reporting, right? So I just created three. right here. And again, all of them are running on a schedule every 5 minutes. And so the idea is that you already have workflows, and what we're going to talk about is how to insert a reporting element to this. So this is the beginning of my helper flow for recording workflow executions. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a timestamp. I'm going to convert that timestamp to something that makes sense to Excel or Google Sheets or the spreadsheet that you want to use. And then we're going to create the row, and then we'll go into the looking at the pivoting the data, right? So here is the spreadsheet that I'm using. Is again, think of this as the most bare minimum that you can do. There's a lot of other capabilities that you can do, a lot of different things that you can capture, but most of this should be straight. Most of this should be sufficient to do some initial calculation. So I like to start with note, right? What this flow does, some metadata for myself. I really like using Markdown. I use headers, I use bold, I use code, all these different things. And I also like to use an assign card for bringing over attributes and bringing over variables. So when I learned to script, I always started with my list of variables and went from there. So I'm going to use an assign card to get things like the workflow name and the ID of the workflow that I'm going to be reporting on, and also an execution ID for future reference. Well, actually, I don't think I need that. Let's see, I have the file name. Oh, and I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it notes in case there's anything that I want to pass from these flows that I'm running as a note when I call this help flow. Now, with this, now I'm going to move into the timestamp, creating a timestamp on when this happened. And typically, the spreadsheets are not able to use standard date formats. So I'm going to create my own. Convert. And so I'm going to pass that date here. I'm going to use a format like, let's see, time zone. Times this format, this. And you can look it up in the help page. I mean, lots of good different formats in there, but this is one that Google Sheets recognizes and is easy for reporting. So with that, I like to use try cards to make sure that I account in case of there's a failure. In here, we're just going to do a create row. Okay, now let's see if I can find workflows. Oh, let me make sure I have the right connector there. Workflow executions, which is this right here. Sheet one, save. So this is going to recognize the columns, right, from your spreadsheet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to use these. And while the spreadsheet typically doesn't recognize the date time, I think is valuable to capture it anyway. And so I'm going to put it in there. And now I'm going to use my custom date time as a date format in here. Now for the flow ID is where we start using the data that comes out of your execution, the caller. And so I'm going to take the name of it for the flow name that made the call to create the row, the ID of it. And if we do have notes, we're going to pass those notes into another column. And so this by itself should be enough to get those executions centralized. If there is an error, we can compose a message. Error recording execution. And here we can do flow. And a lot of other metadata that you can capture. It's really up to you. And then we can have it error out, return error. Okay, so really that is the very core of what you need to do the reporting. We can turn that on because these workflows are already happening. All I need to do here, and this is for your existing flows, right? You can add a function call flow async, and you can put it at the beginning of your flow, somewhere in the middle, at the end. Again, it depends on what you want to capture. But what we want to do here is in the Meetup, record workflow execution with notes, right? So if I want to send note, I can just hard code a value in here. New user, we can throw that in there. And so now in 3 minutes and 55 seconds, we should start seeing entries in here. I'm going to do the same thing for the assign flow. Again, this is running on a 5-minute schedule. And so same thing, call flow, async. We can also hard code the value in here. App is let's call it Salesforce. Whatever flows you have, I mean, this is where you can just kind of insert things that eventually will show up in your notes column. And here, this is just to give you an idea of some of the capabilities that you can build upon. Termination. Our laptop. Whatever the scenario is, when like I said, I have probably dozens of main flows that I'm gonna start inserting this type of reporting into, and now I'm gonna have a spreadsheet that's gonna capture the reporting from all these different flows into one place, so I can start pivoting. To try to do some entries by hand, you can just run this. And we can see that the entry starts showing up in here. Okay, so that is the most basic piece of the reporting side of things. What I typically do is take information from here, and now I start, deciding I'm going to pivot this. So if you haven't had the opportunity to use pivot tables, very easy to use, huge value, and it it is it is the type of stuff that you can build upon. But for this for this meetup, I'm gonna just try to cover some of the essentials, right? So one of the things that becomes really valuable that you cannot do with Okta Workflows out of the box is kind of see time, kind of see how many executions happen in the last, especially definitely beyond 30 days, because your history is only 30 days. But unless you're using like some sort of external reporting, which is what we're doing here, you can't just say, give me the executions for the last week, right? You can go and search for that doing through the user interface, but it's not super valuable if you cannot turn it into something that you can report upon. So what I'm going to do is take the date and start putting in here, right? And I can take the flow name, also put it in. And now, as the executions start happening, we need some values. So you can take some of the values that are going to be in there every time. It defaults to the count by. And so now you can start seeing some of the executions and which flows are happening. So this is one way to do it. If you're going to be aggregating information for the purpose of, for example, how much time was saved, then there's probably different types of formatting you want to do here. Obviously, since today is 320 and all of these executions are going to come with the same timestamp, then we're not going to be able to see some of the other dates show up in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to artificially change some of that. So I'm creating additional entries from the different flows. And since it's just a record that was created from a workflow, I'm artificially going to change this to a previous date, just so the pivot table can have some more valid information. But of course, as you leave these type of flows running long term, this is where the reporting actually gets more interesting. And I just realized that I changed the wrong flow. So I'm sorry, I changed the wrong date. So in reality, I want to change this one, since this is the one that we're using for the reporting. So now when we look at the pivot table is going to show you kind of what that looks like. And so this is where the capabilities of reporting on the workflow executions become a lot more powerful, right? You can start seeing this. The other thing that you can start doing is the formulas, right? So how much time has it been saved? So depending on the type of workflow in the automation that you've done, perhaps that assign app is, saving, the former time used to take 5 minutes and now you reduce it to 1 minute because of the workflow takes care of everything, right? So if you're saving 4 minutes, and this is where it's simple calculations. And so you can start saying, multiply your different cell values, and you can do time saved. Again, all of this is the most basic type of reporting that you can start doing pretty easily. And so in the span of 1, 2, 3, 4 days, 40 minutes saved. That's one way to go about it. You could also look at some of the other so other people affected, right? So in my case, a lot of the automation that happened was for the service desk, right? The service desk no longer has to go and in some cases even impersonate accounts to do certain things and then log out. I mean, from the security standpoint, it was a bit of a nightmare. So now we remove the capabilities for somebody to do impersonation of an account. And this was in one of the applications, it wasn't an Okta account. But we removed that because through the API, so we can do a lot of these things, and that's great. But I specifically put the assign app in here because some of the app administrators that are managing access into applications, even if they're just being asked, can this person receive the access or not, some of them would have these canned emails that would say, when somebody's assigned the application, I want to send this email to the person. But the people wouldn't read the email, and so they ended up having one-on-one Zoom calls with the users, right? So now the user is having to schedule time with the person that knows how to use the application, and now it's taking time, from two people. And so some of the animations that we're doing in the Assign app is automatically send that canned email. And we're even looking at, create a class that you can assign to somebody. They have to complete the class. We check the status of the class. Once it's complete, they actually get access to the application. So lots of fun capabilities there. And now you're saving time, not just for the service desk that does the work, but to the person having to train people over and over and over the same content and how you use a tool and things like that. So when it comes to dollars saved, once you have the time saved, obviously, depending on what it is, you can put some dollar numbers. And again, I would say you want to take a look at, whose time you're saving and what that cost of that resource is to try to put some of these numbers together. So let me stop right there and let me see if there are any questions.
Hey, Pablo, this was really good. No, um, I don't think there are any specific questions to what you were showing, but maybe folks will have questions now. There is a question that I'm answering in chat, but I think it's in a different topic. Yeah, folks, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat or in the Q&A.
So I see a question there. For the class assigned. Let's see.
Oh, yes, there is one. Yes. And
Yeah,
Pablo, you can see the questions, right?
I can.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so we have an API that goes to a learning system, right? And we have the ability to assign courses. We have the ability to read the course completion or status and retrieve that data. And then we have the ability to unassign the course, right? So all those building blocks then become things that you can automate, right? And create a workflow that it creates these prerequisites, right? To actually say, if you're going to be getting access to even like a Salesforce, right? Salesforce is a huge application. There's a lot of capabilities, but it also requires some knowledge. So if you have a Salesforce course, instead of just saying, giving Salesforce to somebody and saying, oh yeah, there's training, go get trained, you can make that training a prerequisite if you have the abilities to create this workflow. Go, I'm going to assign you the training. You have 5 days to complete the course. You complete it. If you complete it in an hour, then you get the Salesforce application right away. or you have up to 5 days, whatever it is. So yeah, we are looking to the capabilities of that. We also use the API a lot for the security awareness training of the company. Lots of fun capabilities there because it's over 6,000 people that take the training. So it makes it a lot easier to manage these things when you can do it via the API. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Okay, I need to open this up. All right, let's see. If I had a workflow and we had to change the Google Sheet, it broke the workflows automation to update, create an entry into the Google Sheet. Has that been fixed? I have not experienced that. Oh, okay. So actually, Isidro, I don't think there is anything that you can do if you go and change the spreadsheet. There's no, there's not gonna be a mechanism for your workflow to go re-understand what the columns are automatically. I think if you go make changes to the workflow to the spreadsheet, you manually have to remember to go to your workflows and say, I changed things up. Now, this is one of the reasons why I like creating the helper flow, because in my situation, and I'm going to share my screen again. I have had this happen before, to where if I go in the spreadsheet and all of a sudden I decide that I want to change something here, um, let's say that I'm just going to add just 2, right? So the workflow itself, this card that we put in here, is not going to know that, right? That you change this. However, if you go and you say choose fields, this will reread the columns, and now notes 2 shows up in here, and so you can do that. That's one way to approach it. The other one, now that we have the ability to copy duplicate cards, that's another way that I like to do, is just create a duplicate. And now you can prepare the second one for what it needs to be, because if you change the order of the columns too, right? In Google Sheets, at least, you can just take this and you can do all kinds of things with it. If you're doing that, you're definitely breaking the workflow. But it's easy to do because, I mean, it's easy to fix it because you can just use these mechanisms to kind of understand what it's like. Once you make the change, you save it, the data should still flow into the right column. So hopefully that helps with that question.
Hey, Pablo, I think there are several more questions.
Okay, see. We have an issue where new hires need to onboard and it takes time. How do you set Chrome access? So that's okay. You're welcome. Need to delete the provision pending status, which is more than 30 days. How many flows need to use? And what is main cards needed to use it? Okay, so venue, on your question, I think what I would look at is how are those people getting provision to begin with? If they're coming from an HRIS system, we've gone as far as even deleting the account, because HRIS will recreate it and it'll be in a stage status, right? So that's an active ongoing process that we have in place. Obviously, you want to try to keep that governance correct to make sure that there is some sort of record of kind of what's happened, right? So again, Google Sheets, great integration, very easy to take data there. We use Google Chat. So I have webhooks in the Google Chat spaces that you can use to send commands to do an HTTP call to a Google Chat. And so we have private Google Chat spaces, just like you would do in Slack, and have Slack spaces where, you know, um, the workflow can start reporting in a place where you can actually see. So hopefully that answers that question. Isidro, delete a row in that column. Maybe mine was a glitch or something. I didn't really. So Isidro, the one other thing that I thought about was if you are using Google Forms to to have other people report stuff, put it into Google Sheets, that is it doesn't work that well. So there is a card. Let me show you my screen. But that's a completely different use case. So if I share my screen, share my screen. So one of the things that we did was create Google Forms. The Google Forms will create new rows, but the moment that you make a change to one, all of a sudden you make it like duplicate entries. And then your workflow in here, let me just use this one as an example. In your workflows, you can use for Google Sheets a oh, sorry, it's a trigger. So let me do this. So there is this trigger of a new row. It doesn't work well. It doesn't work well at all. If the data is very, if you are leaving this worksheet alone, a spreadsheet alone, this will work well. It runs every 5 minutes. It looks for new rows. But the moment that you touch one of those rows, this doesn't work really well. It's not smart enough to understand that things changed. So if that's your use case, I would recommend looking at reading all the rows and getting rid of anything that's been processed and just focus on the new ones. That's a much better approach, in my opinion. And that's what I've had to do. I have a lot of experience, a lot of experience on that. So cool. I think that may be the last one, right?
I think so. But I'm gonna share again the two Slack channels where you um hang out. Yes, and then again, people can find you there and ask more questions. But but of course, other folks, there are many other community members, and they can also, um, answer questions. But no, Paul,
Absolutely.
this was very good. Um, yeah. I think, yeah. Then we can end the session, but we should definitely have you back again, um, sometime this year.
I love to. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate
Um,
you putting this together, Max,
of course.
and
Thank you for
all the
coming.
support to the community. Uh,
Thank
those
you.
uh, those Slack channels, yeah, like Max said, there's people far more intelligent than me, far more seasoned. Well, maybe that's not more seasoned, but definitely people that have done some fantastic things with workflows. So it's great to go into those spaces and ask the channels. Well, before you ask the question, you should search because there's a good chance that it's been answered. And if you don't search, somebody's going to tell you, I posted about this. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think the only thing with Slack, it's a little bit challenging to search with Slack, right?
it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I know on Mac Admin Slack, you post a question and then literally within, I don't know, a few minutes, you're gonna get a reply, which is incredible.
It's called
But
nerd sniping, by the
yeah.
way. There's a
Oh,
term for
really?
it.
I've never heard that.
Look it up. Nerd sniping. You just
Okay.
have these people that are like eager to show their knowledge, and you just have to kind of like put it there. And we will jump in there because I've been guilty of that.
Oh, because I see a question and I start typing and I see, it says Slack, someone else is typing. And by the time, I can't even finish and then, oop, there's a response. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna delete
Yeah.
what I
But
typed.
that's what's great about a community, right? We're all
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we approach problems because there's so many opportunities. We approach problems in many different ways. So yeah, I highly encourage you if you're doing Okta Workflows to join one or both of those Slack instances. So.
Yeah, but I also want to share, in addition to Slack, so we do also have a community forum, so where I think searching is a little bit maybe more straightforward there. So there's also a category where you can share templates. So these are not official Okta workflows templates, but just community submitted templates. So if you build a flow that you want to share, you can just upload it there with just the description of what it does. Um, so yeah, community forum. And again, if you're hesitant uploading your flow, when you export a flow, none of your connection information is there. So just make sure you don't have any private keys inside the flow, like in a compose card. But any connection information is not going to be there. So you can sort of share the flow or make it available for other folks to download.
And I think the same thing applies to tables. So if you export a flow, it'll export the table, but the table will be empty.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
So
It will
if
have the
you have a
metadata.
configuration table
Hmm.
and it's not ideal. I don't recommend it for API keys or anything like that, but your configuration information for your instances of applications and application names, whatever, some of those things, the table will be exported. It will be properly referenced, but it will be empty. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, a lot of different resources to get help from the community. So yeah, give it a try. But Pablo, again, thank you so much for hosting with us today, and thank you folks for joining. Again, this is recorded, and then it will be up on YouTube. You'll get a message from us with a link to YouTube, and then yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
All right. See you. Thank you, Max. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.